The rain came down in sheets over Seattle that Thursday night, drumming against the warped windows of Ellie Harper's second-floor apartment. She stood in the cramped kitchen, 32 years old, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing an oversized sweater that smelled faintly of old books and lavender. She'd spent the day at the public library, shelving novels and helping retirees navigate the internet, a quiet routine she'd built over the decade she'd been married to Jake Keller. He wasn't home yet. His shift at the auto shop often ran late, but the hum of the refrigerator and the patter of rain kept her company as she stirred a pot of soup. Ellie wasn't one for surprises. She liked predictability, the way Jake's boots thudded against the mat when he got home, the creak of their sagging couch, the way he'd grumble about oil stains but still kiss her forehead before dinner. They weren't rich. His mechanic gig and her librarian salary barely covered the rent and a few extras, but they'd made it work. 10 years in this damp, gray city, dreaming of a day when Jake might open his own garage and she'd have a little corner for a used book nook. It wasn't glamorous, but it was theirs. She glanced at the clock, 8:47 p.m., and sighed. He texted earlier, something vague about grabbing a beer with the guys. She didn't mind. She'd used the quiet to finish cataloging a box of donated paperbacks she'd brought home. As she turned off the stove, her eyes caught on his jacket slung over the back of a chair. It was his favorite, a beat-up denim thing with frayed cuffs, still damp from the rain. She reached to hang it up, but something crinkled in the pocket. Frowning, she slipped her hand inside and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. A lottery ticket. Ellie squinted at it under the dim kitchen light. The numbers were smudged but legible. 7, 14, 22, 39, 51, Powerball 8. She snorted softly. Jake wasn't the gambling type. He'd probably picked it up on a whim at the gas station, maybe with his coffee and a pack of gum. She was about to toss it onto the counter when she noticed the date, last week's draw. Curiosity tugged at her. She grabbed her phone, pulled up the Washington State Lottery site, and typed in the numbers. Her breath caught. The screen blinked back at her. Jackpot winner, $15 million. She checked again, her pulse quickening. The numbers matched. Every single one. No way, she whispered, her voice swallowed by the rain. Her hand shook as she clutched the ticket, her mind racing. $15 million. After taxes, that was still, what, 10 million? More? Enough to change everything. She waited for Jake, pacing the tiny living room, the ticket burning a hole in her pocket. He'd stumble in any minute, grinning that lopsided grin, and they'd laugh about it together, how he'd forgotten to check, how they were millionaires now. She pictured it, a little house on Puget Sound, his garage, her bookshop. But the clock ticked past 10, then 11, and the apartment stayed silent. By midnight, worry gnawed at her. She called his phone straight to voicemail. A text, "Where are you?" No reply. Exhausted, she collapsed onto the couch, the ticket still in her hand. She must have dozed off, because the next thing she knew, gray dawn light seeped through the blinds. The front door was still locked, Jake's boots absent from the mat. Unease coiled in her gut. She checked her phone, no messages. Then she saw it, a scrap of paper on the kitchen table, half hidden under a mug she hadn't noticed last night. She stumbled over, her bare feet cold on the linoleum, and picked it up. Jake's handwriting, scrawled in black ink. Ellie, I won. I don't need you anymore. Take care. Her stomach dropped. She read it again, the words blurring. Won? The ticket. He knew, but he'd left it behind. She yanked open her laptop and logged into their joint bank account. Empty. Every cent, $3, $214.67, scraped together over years, gone. Transferred out at 2:17 a.m. to an account she didn't recognize. Her knees buckled, and she gripped the table, the ticket fluttering to the floor. He'd taken everything and run. But why leave the ticket? She snatched it up, her mind spinning. Was it a mistake? A taunt? Or something else? She stared at the crumpled paper, her shock hardening into something sharper. Jake thought he'd won, thought he'd left her with nothing. But he'd miscalculated. She had the ticket, the key to his fortune. And she wasn't about to let him erase her that easily. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle, but inside Ellie Harper, a storm was brewing. Ellie Harper sat at the kitchen table of her Seattle apartment, the lottery ticket tucked into the back pocket of her jeans like a live wire. The note from Jake, I won. I don't need you anymore, lay crumpled beside a cold mug of coffee. It was Friday morning, barely 7 a.m., and the city outside hummed with the dull rhythm of early commuters. Rain streaked the windows, blurring the world beyond, but inside, Ellie's mind was razor-sharp. She hadn't slept, Not really, just a few fitful hours of staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the last 10 years with Jake Keller. How had she missed this? How had the man who'd once fixed her broken bookshelf with a shy grin turned into this? She opened her laptop again, refreshing their joint bank account. Still empty. The transfer details stared back at her. $3,214.67 moved to an unknown account at 2:17 a.m. yesterday. She called the bank, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. The teller was polite but unhelpful. Without access to the new account's details, there was nothing they could do. "Did you authorize this transfer, ma'am?" the woman asked. Ellie swallowed. "No, but it's complicated." She hung up, her hands trembling. Jake had planned this. The money, the note, his absence, it wasn't a whim. It was a blueprint. She needed answers, and she needed them fast. Ellie grabbed her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she landed on Ben Carter, a former coworker of Jake's who'd always been decent. He worked at the same auto shop, knew Jake's habits. She hesitated. Calling felt like admitting defeat, but pride wouldn't get her answers. Ben picked up on the second ring, his voice groggy. "Ellie? Everything okay?" "Ben, have you seen Jake?" She kept her tone neutral, though her pulse raced. "He didn't come home last night." A pause, then a rustle, like Ben was sitting up. "Oh, not since Wednesday." He was acting weird, though. Kept talking about some big break, bragging to the guys about quitting soon. I figured he was just blowing off steam. "You sure he's not at his cousin's?" Ellie's stomach twisted. Jake hadn't mentioned quitting. Or any big break. "Thanks, Ben. If you hear from him, let me know." She hung up before he could ask questions. The ticket pressed against her thigh, a reminder of the stakes. $15 million. Jake knew about the win, but he'd left the ticket behind. Why? She pulled it out, smoothing its creased edges. The numbers, 7, 14, 22, 39, 51, Powerball 8, felt like a code she hadn't cracked yet. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. A text from her friend Lila, who worked at the library with her. "You coming in today?" "New shipment's a mess." Ellie stared at the screen. Work felt like a parallel universe, but she needed normalcy, even for a few hours. Plus, the library had computers, records, resources. Maybe she could dig into Jake's tracks. She texted back, "Be there by 9. Then she tucked the ticket into a zippered pouch in her purse, locked the apartment, and stepped into the drizzle. The library was quiet when she arrived, its fluorescent lights casting a sterile glow over the stacks. Lila waved from the circulation desk, her red curls bouncing. "You look like hell," she said, not unkindly. Ellie forced a smile. "Rough night." She didn't elaborate. She wasn't ready to spill the truth, not yet. Instead, she slipped into the back office, where a clunky desktop hummed to life. She started with Jake's social media, but his accounts were dormant, untouched for weeks. Strange, he'd always been the type to post about new tools or Seahawks games. She tried their bank again, this time checking older transactions. Nothing unusual until 2 weeks ago, a $500 cash withdrawal, labeled miscellaneous. Jake never carried cash like that. Frustrated, she leaned back, rubbing her temples. That's when she remembered the diner receipt she'd found in his jacket pocket last month, tucked behind a gas station stub. It was from a place called Rusty's, a dive bar across town they'd never been to together. She'd thought nothing of it at the time, maybe a work thing, but now it nagged at her. On a hunch, she searched Rusty's online. The website was bare, but the Yelp reviews mentioned a bartender named Rita Blake, known for knowing everyone's business. Ellie's gut tightened. It was a long shot, but long shots were all she had. She clocked out early, telling Lila she wasn't feeling well, and drove to Rusty's. The bar was a squat brick building wedged between a pawn shop and a laundromat, its neon sign flickering even in daylight. Inside, it smelled of stale beer and fried onions. A woman in her late 40s stood behind the counter, her platinum hair pulled tight, her nails tapping the wood. Ellie's breath hitched. This had to be Rita. She slid onto a stool, ordering a soda to buy time. Rita's eyes flicked over her, sharp but disinterested. "You new around here?" she asked, sliding the glass across. "Just passing through," Ellie said, her voice casual. "Heard this place has history." Rita smirked, leaning closer. "More than you'd think." "What's your deal?" Ellie hesitated, then took a gamble. "Looking for someone. Guy named Jake. Mechanic. You know him?" Rita's smirk faltered, just for a second, before she recovered. "Jake? Yeah, he's been in. Not lately, though." Her tone was too smooth, like she'd rehearsed it. Ellie's heart pounded, but she kept her face neutral. He mentioned anything about a trip? Maybe a big win. Rita's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Ellie thought she'd pushed too far. Then Rita shrugged, turning to wipe the counter. People talk big. Doesn't mean much. Ellie left a tip and walked out, her mind racing. Rita knew something. Her reaction screamed it. Back in her car, she called Ben again. One more thing, she said. Jake ever talk about a woman named Rita? Ben groaned. Rita Blake? Yeah, she's bad news. Hangs around the shop sometimes, always pitching get-rich-quick stuff. Jake was cozy with her last month, but I told him to steer clear. Ellie thanked him and hung up, her thoughts spiraling. Jake hadn't just left her, he'd planned it, maybe with Rita's help. That night, she sat cross-legged on her living room floor, the ticket in front of her. She'd checked the lottery site again. The prize was unclaimed, which meant Jake hadn't cashed it yet. Why? Had he forgotten the ticket? Or was he waiting for someone? Her phone pinged with an email from the bank, a routine statement. She almost ignored it, but a line caught her eye. A new account opened in Jake's name alone, linked to a P.O. box she didn't recognize. Worse, she found a PDF attachment, a divorce filing, dated 3 weeks ago, claiming they'd been separated for months. A lie. He'd forged her signature. Ellie's blood ran cold. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a heist. Jake thought he could erase her, rewrite their life to claim the millions alone. But he'd left the ticket behind, and that was his first mistake. She wasn't the naive librarian he'd counted on. She'd find Rita, unravel their plan, and take back what was hers, legally, meticulously. The rain outside picked up, but Ellie didn't hear it. She was already plotting her next move. Ellie Harper stood in the dim glow of her Seattle apartment, the lottery ticket now hidden in a locked drawer beneath a stack of old library schedules. It was Saturday evening, and the rain had softened to a misty haze, cloaking the city in a quiet that felt both eerie and electric. The divorce filing she'd found in the bank email, a forgery claiming she and Jake had been separated for months, sat on the coffee table, its lies glaring up at her. She'd spent the day piecing together the puzzle, Jake's secret account, his connection to Rita Blake, the unclaimed $15 million prize. He thought he'd outsmarted her, but he'd underestimated one thing: Ellie wasn't about to roll over. She needed help, someone who could navigate the legal mess Jake had spun. Her mind landed on Tom Ridley, a lanky, soft-spoken guy she'd known since high school. Tom had been the kid who'd rather debate in mock trials than play football, and now he was a junior attorney at a small firm downtown. They hadn't talked much since her wedding. Jake never liked him, but Tom had always been steady, the kind of friend who'd show up without asking for anything in return. She dialed his number, her fingers tapping nervously against the phone. Ellie. Tom's voice came through, warm but surprised. It's been forever. You okay? Not exactly, she said, her throat tight. Can we meet? It's urgent. And complicated. She heard the clink of a glass, then a muffled sure as he shifted. Coffee shop on Pine, 7 p.m.? She agreed and hung up, grabbing her coat. The ticket stayed locked away. She wasn't risking it leaving the apartment until she had a plan. The coffee shop was a cozy hole in the wall, its windows fogged from the heat inside. Tom was already there, his dark hair tousled, a stack of legal pads beside his latte. He stood when she walked in, his gray eyes scanning her face. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said, half smiling. Ellie slid into the booth, her hands clasped tight. More like I've been living with one. She spilled it all. The ticket, Jake's disappearance, the drained account, the forged divorce papers, Rita's cagey reaction at Rusty's. Tom listened, his expression shifting from shock to a quiet, focused intensity. When she finished, he leaned back, exhaling. Okay. First thing, do not cash that ticket yet. If it's unclaimed, Jake can't touch the money without it. That's your leverage. He scribbled a note on his pad. Second, the divorce filing's a fraud. We can prove it with timestamps, joint bills, anything showing you were still together. Third, this Rita woman. She's the wild card. If she's in on it, we need to know her angle. Ellie nodded, her mind racing. She acted like she barely knew him, but it was fake. Too polished. And Ben said she's got a reputation: schemes, quick cash. Tom tapped his pen against the table. Let's dig into her. If she's got a record, it could blow this open. Meanwhile, secure the ticket. Somewhere Jake can't guess. I've got it in a drawer at home, she said. Tom shook his head. Not good enough. He's got keys, right? Ellie's stomach dropped. She hadn't changed the locks. Put it somewhere public but safe. Like the library safe. You've got access, he doesn't. It was a brilliant idea. She worked the weekend shift tomorrow. She'd stash it then. They parted with a plan. Tom would pull public records on Rita and draft a counterclaim to freeze Jake's new account. Ellie would gather proof of their shared life, photos, texts, utility bills. Back home, she rifled through a shoebox of memories, a Polaroid of them at Pike Place Market, a grocery list in Jake's scrawl, a lease renewal from last year. Each piece was a brick in the wall she'd built against him. But as she worked, her phone buzzed, a blocked number. She answered, cautious. Hello? Ellie. Jake's voice, low and clipped. You got something of mine. I need it back. Her heart slammed against her ribs, but she kept her tone even. I don't know what you're talking about. A pause, then a dry laugh. Don't play dumb. The ticket. I know you found it. Hand it over, or you'll regret it. The line went dead before she could respond. Her hand shook as she set the phone down. He knew she had it. How? Had Rita seen her at Rusty's and tipped him off? Or had he been watching? She double-checked the locks, her pulse racing. Sleep was out of the question now. Instead, she sat up, staring at the divorce papers, her fear hardening into resolve. Jake wanted a fight? He'd get one. The next morning, she slipped the ticket into a sealed envelope and drove to the library. The building was still waking up, its silence a balm after the restless night. She punched the code into the safe, a hulking metal box in the staff room, and tucked the envelope beneath a stack of petty cash receipts. Safe, for now. As she closed it, Lila poked her head in. You're here early. Everything okay? Ellie forced a smile. Just organizing. You know me. Back at her desk, she borrowed a library computer and searched Rita Blake. Nothing solid at first, just a few mentions in local forums, vague complaints about shady deals. Then, buried in a decade-old news article, a hit. Rita Blake, 38, fined for running unlicensed investment scheme. No jail time, just a slap on the wrist, but it was enough. Rita wasn't just a barfly, she was a con artist. Ellie printed the page, her mind buzzing. If Rita was helping Jake, what was her cut? And why hadn't he claimed the prize yet? Her phone pinged. Tom. Found something. Meet me tonight. Same place. She spent the day on autopilot, shelving books while her thoughts churned. By 7 p.m., she was back at the coffee shop, where Tom slid a folder across the table. Rita's rap sheet, he said. Small-time fraud, mostly fake loans, pyramid schemes. She's careful, never crosses into felony territory. But here's the kicker. She's linked to a guy who got busted last year for laundering lottery winnings. Same MO, partner up, claimed the prize, split it under the table. Ellie's eyes widened. So Jake's not just running. He's outsourcing. Tom nodded. Exactly. He needs the ticket, but he's letting Rita handle the dirty work. Probably thinks it keeps his hands clean. She leaned forward, adrenaline surging. Then we use that. If she's the brains, she's the weak link. Tom grinned, a rare spark in his usually calm demeanor. I've got a buddy at the precinct. I'll tip them off anonymously, let them sniff around Rita. Meanwhile, you've got to bait Jake. Make him think you're scared. Sloppy. Flush him out. Ellie hesitated, the weight of it sinking in. Playing Jake's game meant risk, but sitting still meant losing everything. Okay, she said finally. How? Spread a rumor, Tom said. Tell someone he knows, like Ben, that you're keeping the ticket at home. He'll bite. And when he does, we'll be ready. Ellie nodded, her resolve stealing. She'd spent years building a life with Jake, only for him to torch it. Now, she'd turn his greed against him, legally, quietly, and with a precision he'd never see coming. The counterattack had begun. Ellie Harper sat in the dim light of her Seattle apartment, the faint hum of the refrigerator cutting through the Sunday night stillness. The lottery ticket was safe in the library vault, but its weight lingered in her mind, a silent pulse driving her every move. Tom's plan echoed in her head. Bait Jake, flush him out, let him trip over his own greed. The call from him last night, hand it over, or you'll regret it, still rang in her ears, a mix of threat and desperation. She wasn't scared anymore, not exactly. She was angry, and that anger had sharpened into something cold and deliberate. She picked up her phone and dialed Ben Carter, Jake's old coworker from the auto shop. It was a calculated risk. Ben was loyal but loose-lipped, the perfect conduit for a rumor. He answered, his voice thick with sleep. Ellie? What's up? It's late. Hey, Ben, she said, injecting a tremor into her tone. Sorry, I'm freaking out. Jake's been calling, saying I've got something he wants. That ticket, it's here, at the apartment. I don't know what to do. She paused, letting the silence stretch, picturing Ben's bleary confusion turning to curiosity. Ticket, he mumbled. You mean that lottery thing he was yapping about? He's got you mixed up in that. Ellie sighed, loud enough for effect. Yeah, I found it in his jacket. He thinks it's his, but I can't deal with this. Don't tell him, okay? I just needed to vent. Ben grunted, half awake. Sure. Ellie, hang tight. She hung up, her pulse steady. He'd tell Jake she was counting on it. Monday morning dawned gray and damp, the city shrouded in fog. Ellie drove to the library, her hands tied on the wheel. She'd spent the night rigging a decoy, an empty envelope labeled ticket in Jake's scrawl, tucked into a kitchen drawer. If he broke in, he'd find it, and nothing else. At work, she kept busy, shelving books while stealing glances at her phone. Tom had texted, tips sent to cops Rita. They're digging. Stay sharp. She nodded to herself. The net was tightening. By noon, her hunch paid off. Lila, her co-worker, poked her head into the break room. Ellie, some guy just called the front desk asking if you were here. Sounded intense. I said you were off today. Ellie's stomach flipped. Jake. He was sniffing around, testing her routine. Thanks, Lila, she said, forcing a smile. Probably a bill collector. But her mind raced, Ben must have talked, and Jake was already moving. That evening, she met Tom at the coffee shop again, its warm lights a stark contrast to the chill outside. He slid into the booth, his face taut with news. Rita's in deeper than we thought, he said, keeping his voice low. My precinct buddy says they've got her on a wiretap from an old case, bragging about flipping a big score with some guy. Dates match Jake's win. And get this, she's got a fake ID tied to a bank account in Tacoma. Cops think she's planning to claim the prize herself. Cut Jake out. Ellie's eyes widened. So he's not the mastermind, he's the mark. Tom nodded, a grim smile tugging at his lips. Exactly. She's playing him. Probably convinced him to wait, set up the divorce scam, then she'd swoop in with a forged claim. But without the ticket, they're both stalled. Ellie leaned back, processing. Rita wasn't just a sidekick, she was the puppet master, and Jake was her dupe. It was almost poetic. Then we let them hang themselves, she said. Tom raised an eyebrow. How? She leaned forward, her voice steady. Jake thinks it's at my place. He'll try to grab it. When he does, we catch him, breaking in, empty-handed. Meanwhile, the cops close in on Rita. 2 birds, 1 stone. Tom hesitated, then nodded. Risky, but clean. I'll stake out your block tonight. You stay somewhere else, crash at my place. She agreed, but as she left the coffee shop, a shadow flickered across the street, a man in a hoodie, too far to ID. Her breath caught. Jake? Or one of Rita's cronies? She kept walking, her pace even, until she reached her car. Back at the apartment, she grabbed a bag, clothes, toothbrush, the shoebox of proof, and left the decoy envelope in plain sight. Then she drove to Tom's, a modest walk-up near Capitol Hill, her nerves buzzing. At 11 p.m., her phone lit up with a call from Tom. He's here, he whispered. Just saw him jimmy the lock. Hoodie, gloves, definitely Jake. I'm filming from the car. Ellie's heart pounded. What's he doing? A rustle, then, he's inside. Lights are off. Wait, he's coming out. Empty-handed, looks pissed. Heading north on foot. She exhaled, relief mixing with triumph. He'd taken the bait, and found nothing. But the night wasn't over. At 1 a.m., Tom called again, his voice tense. Cops just raided Rusty's. Rita's in custody, caught with fake docs and a burner phone link to Jake. They're hauling her downtown. Ellie sat up on Tom's couch, adrenaline surging. Did they get him? Tom paused. Not yet. He's slippery, probably bolted when he realized the ticket wasn't there. But Rita's singing already, pinning it all on him to cut a deal. Ellie's mind raced. Jake was on the run, Rita was cracked, and the ticket was still hers. She'd outmaneuvered them both, but the game wasn't won yet. She pictured Jake, frantic, scrambling for a next move, unaware the noose was tightening. What now? She asked. Tom's voice steadied. We wait. He'll surface, hungry, desperate. When he does, we've got the divorce fraud, the break-in on video, and Rita's testimony. He's done. She hung up, staring into the dark of Tom's living room. The plan had worked. Jake had stormed in, found the decoy, and left empty-handed, while Rita's empire crumbled under police lights. But a nagging thought lingered. Jake wasn't stupid. Greedy, yes, but not dumb. Why hadn't he checked the ticket status? Why trust Rita so blindly? A chill crept up her spine. What if he had another play, one she hadn't seen? Outside, the fog thickened, muffling the city's pulse. Ellie pulled a blanket tighter around her shoulders, her victory bittersweet. She'd turned the tables, but the board wasn't clear. Jake was out there, and until he was caught, she couldn't rest. She glanced at the clock, 2:17 a.m., the same time he drained their account. A coincidence or a taunt? Either way, she'd be ready. The counterattack had landed its first blow, but the war wasn't over. Ellie Harper woke to the muted glow of dawn filtering through Tom Ridley's living room blinds. It was Tuesday morning in Seattle, the air thick with the damp promise of more rain. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying the night's chaos. Jake breaking into her apartment, finding nothing but a decoy. Rita Blake hauled off in cuffs, her scheme unraveling. The $15 million lottery ticket remained secure in the library safe, a quiet trump card in Ellie's hands. She stretched on the couch, her muscles stiff, and checked her phone. A text from Tom at 3 a.m. Jake's still MIA. Cops have Rita's statement. Says he masterminded it. Call me when you're up. She dialed him, cradling a mug of instant coffee Tom had left out. His voice crackled through, tired but sharp. Morning. Rita's spilling everything. Claims Jake roped her into faking the divorce, promised her a cut to launder the winnings. She's got texts, but they're vague. Enough to rattle him, not enough to lock him up yet. Ellie's grip tightened on the mug. He's still out there? Tom sighed. Yeah. No sign since he bolted from your place. But he's cornered. Rita's flipped, the break-ins on video. He'll surface. Ellie nodded, though he couldn't see it. What's next? Tom's tone steadied. We file today. Counter the divorce. Claim your share of the prize. I've got the proof. Joint bills, photos, your signature on the lease. The ticket's communal property. He bought it during the marriage, before he ran. We'll bury him legally. She exhaled, a weight lifting. Let's do it. By noon, they were at Tom's firm, a cramped office overlooking the waterfront. Papers spread across the desk, the forged divorce filing, Ellie's evidence, a grainy still from Tom's video of Jake jimmying her lock. She signed where Tom pointed, her hand steady. This freezes his new account, he said, tapping a form, and flags the ticket claim. He can't touch the money without a fight. They submitted it electronically, the clerk's confirmation pinging Ellie's inbox by 2 p.m. Step 1. Done. She drove to the library next, her nerves buzzing. The safe's code clicked under her fingers, and she pulled the ticket free, its creased edges a testament to the storm it had sparked. She photographed it, front, back, time-stamped, then locked it away again. Evidence, leverage, power. Back at her desk, she checked the lottery site, still unclaimed. Jake was stalling or scrambling. Either way, she held the reins. That afternoon, Tom called with a breakthrough. Cops found Jake's car, abandoned near Tacoma, keys in the ignition. Prints match. Looks like he ditched it after the break-in. Ellie's pulse quickened. Tacoma? That's where Rita's fake account was. Tom grunted. Yup. He's circling her tracks. Probably thinks she's still his ticket out. Dumb move. Her phones are tapped now. Ellie smiled faintly. His greed was his noose. Days blurred into a tense waiting game. Ellie stayed at Tom's, her apartment a crime scene until the police cleared it. She worked her shifts, fielding Lila's worried glances with vague excuses. Thursday night, the dam broke. Tom burst through the door, his coat dripping. They got him, he said, grinning. Gas station in Olympia, tried to pawn a stolen watch. Clerk recognized him from a news blip about Rita's arrest. Ellie stood, her breath catching. He's in custody? Booked an hour ago, Tom said. Caught with a burner phone. Text to Rita, begging her to fix it. She didn't reply. She's already cut a deal. Ellie sank back, relief washing over her. Jake, the man who dismissed her as disposable, was trapped by his own desperation. She didn't gloat, just let the quiet victory settle. The legal fallout came fast. Friday, Ellie and Tom sat in a courthouse meeting room, a judge on speakerphone. Jake's lawyer, a harried public defender, argued he'd acted alone, that Rita coerced him. But the evidence crushed it. The forged divorce, the break-in video, Rita's testimony, the ticket's purchase date tied to their joint debit card. This is marital property, the judge ruled, her voice crisp. Ms. Harper's entitled to half, $7.5 million post-tax. Mr. Keller's actions void his claim to contest. Jake's share? Frozen, pending IRS review. He dodged taxes on his secret account withdrawals. Ellie walked out, the keys to her future jingling in her pocket. Jake faced charges, fraud, burglary, theft, while Rita's plea deal earned her probation and fines. The courtroom buzz faded as Ellie stepped into the drizzle. Tom at her side. "You did it," he said, nudging her. She nodded, a small smile breaking through. "We did." Weeks later, she stood in a narrow storefront on Ballard Avenue, its brick walls freshly painted sage green. The sign above read Harper's Haven Books, a nod to the nook she'd dreamed of with Jake, only now it was hers alone. Shelves brimmed with used novels, a corner held journals she'd designed herself, inspired by those late-night library shifts. She'd hired 2 women, single moms who'd survived their own betrayals, to run the register and stock. The $7.5 million sat in a trust, funding the shop and a scholarship for local kids. She didn't flaunt it, just built something steady, hers. Opening day drew a crowd, neighbors, library regulars, even Ben, who shuffled in with an apology. "Didn't mean to spill to Jake," he mumbled. Ellie waved it off. "You helped, in a way." He grinned, sheepish, and bought a paperback. By evening, the till rang with modest sales, but the real win was the chatter, people lingering, swapping stories, finding refuge. Ellie watched from behind the counter, her hands tracing the wood she'd sanded herself. This wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. She heard about Jake through the grapevine, sentenced to 3 years, working off fines in a prison garage. Rita vanished, her bar gig gone. Ellie didn't dwell on them. One crisp morning, she unlocked the shop and found a note slipped under the door. "Saw your place in the paper. You won the real prize. A friend." She tucked it into a drawer, her chest warm. Outside, the rain eased, sunlight breaking through. She flipped the open sign, ready for whatever came next, not as Jake's shadow, but as Ellie Harper, whole.